Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. Very excited today. We've got a wonderful guest. We've got Einar Torfi Finnsson. He is the CEO and the lead guide for Arctic hiking and expeditions. Einar, welcome to the show. Happy to have you here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
We spoke, for our listeners, we spoke a few weeks ago and had a nice conversation, and really haven't had too many conversations with people from your part of the world, and look forward to doing that. Right before I hit the record button, you were explaining that you've got your short day light, which I wasn't sure what that was, but it's a function of where you live. So Einar, where do you live?
I live in Iceland. It's actually a little bit twisted, but I got a home up in North Iceland on a farm. And then I have also a place in Reykjavik, the capital, in the south part. So
we're late November, early December. What's the weather like there right now?
Well, it's actually quite nice where I am now. I'm in Reykjavik. It's northerly wind, frost, maybe -2 Celsius or something like that. Pretty calm, but up northeast it's windy, it's stormy. So it's very often like that. It's not the same everywhere on the island. It's a big island, Iceland.
And you don't get a whole lot of daylight during the day. Did you grow up there?
Yes, I grew up here.
So I'm not going to ask you if you're used to it, but...
It's not a long day, no. It's like you say, it's getting shorter. We're down below 6 hours now of daylight.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your short day to join us. That's very great. Einar, before we get started, I want to learn much more about kind of your path, how you got from where you were to where you are now. And let's start by giving our listeners kind of an idea of what you do with Arctic hiking and expeditions, just so they can kind of know what is Arctic hiking and expeditions before we start digging into your past.
Yeah, so it's actually, we have 2 companies, me and my childhood best friend. We have a company with this brand name in Iceland and another one in Greenland, in Kópavogur on the east coast of Greenland. And what we do is that we run hiking or trekking trips and expeditions on skis in both countries, but our main focus has been the east side of Greenland for the last years. And it's wonderful, actually.
So I assume we're talking, is it all multi-day trips? And if so, what's the average length of one of your group trips, or one of the trips that you run for your clients?
Most of our trips are 1 week to 12 days, but we do longer trips like the crossing of the Greenland Icecap. And that one is like around 4 weeks, and you have to be flexible because the crossing itself can take from 3 to 4 weeks. And then you have always a little bit time before and after. So we normally count 5 weeks for the whole thing.
Just when I hear you say this, I'm envisioning kind of maybe intense, physically intense trips, maybe even mentally for your guests. That somebody calls you and says, geez, I want to go, but I'm not in great shape, or I'm not really the type to, sleep on the ground, that type of thing. How do you help them decide if this is the right fit or not?
Well, we do ask people for a CV of their activity. And well, I mean, if somebody is sure that he doesn't want to lay on the ground, then that's easy. He has to take a trip with us that is all inside. We do offer, hut-based trekkings. But, if it's a person that doesn't have the experience but wants to do it, then We have offered possibilities like polar training, private training for winter trips. So we can offer the preparation of that as well.
Okay. So, knowing very little about Greenland and Iceland, in my mind, I'm thinking that trekking trips on these expeditions mostly would be summer trips, but I think maybe I'm wrong. So help me understand your seasonality.
Yeah, so we have a winter season that is mainly March and April. May it would still be the winter, and then we have a summer season June, July, August into September. And the summer season is by far the biggest in number of people, but we sometimes have really big trips in the spring, like I mentioned. So things like the crossing of the Icecap, we do normally start in the end of April and into the end of May.
What I know everybody's different. I'm sure you've had clients from all different motivations and walks of life, but what do you think typically inspires somebody to go to Iceland in the winter to do stuff like this or Greenland?
Good question. I think some, envy for or wanting adventures, dive into pristine nature maybe. It's different from one to another. I mean, there are people that are checking boxes, wanting to have something they can brag about. So there are various reasons for people to do this. I mean, um, to disconnect, to because I mean, I can tell you that whatever you have worries about when you're skiing in Greenland, I don't think the prices on the stock market are going to hunt you much.
That's
I
that's
mean,
a good point.
I think as it is for me, I mean, I've been in position where I've been a bit stressed and worrying about a whole lot of things, and then I'm on my skis and whoop, it just leaves and I'm there. So it's like being in the moment thing to be, crossing the ice cap is like 3 to 4 weeks of being in the moment. You don't have the time or the possibility to actually worry about much. You're just doing your thing to get across. And that means taking one step in front of another. What I have found out that actually what comes to me in that's probably very individual, but what comes to me when I'm doing a long trip like that is I get a lot of music in my head. I think about my family, my friends, but they totally get rid of my worries.
Has it always been like that for you?
Yes, yes, definitely.
Okay. So when you speak to somebody that's from maybe closer to the equator, and I suspect a lot of them just don't really get it. I'm not sure I completely get it. I grew up in Wyoming. I used to go out in the winter at times, but it was usually pretty short. I might go camping for a couple days, go up
Hmm.
and, but not much more than that. So I suspect you get a lot of people that just can't get their head around it, and that's okay. But
Yeah, that's all right.
yeah, not sure where I'm going with this. I'm just fascinated. I think it's pretty cool.
I mean, it's an experience that is not for everyone, that's for sure. And you have to be ready for it and wanting it. But when you're there, I definitely think that people get like unplugged from the world, especially from what is like stressful of the world.
Describe crossing the polar ice cap or the Greenland ice cap is in my
Mhm.
mind. I mean, I've seen documentaries, but it's hard for me to kind of get my head there. Is it just flat ice or are you going through mountain passes? What is the ice cap like and what do people see?
It is mainly, well, not totally flat because we've been doing it from the east side, so you're climbing something like 100 to 140 meters per day. So that's like, I don't know, 500 feet maximum a day. And so it's a very flattish, but it's like a, you know, surface of snow that is worked by the wind. So it has sastrukis, which are these like ice or snowy waves of formations created by wind. It has all different types of lights, but you kind of stop seeing mountains on day 3 from the east, and you will see them again maybe the day before you arrive at the other end.
roughly 4 weeks later?
Yeah, so let's say
Just based.
3 weeks. And then there is one phenomenon on the way that we do see and we visit, and that's called Die 2. This is an old radar station built by the Americans on the Icecap from the Cold War. And that's a phenomenon, you know, I don't know how to pronounce that word, but it's a thing that looks like a monster on the Icecap, and it's like 2/3 of the way. It's a ridiculously big metal structure with a radar, like a bowl, or what do you call it? The like a round shape protecting the radar on top.
Okay.
And it's like from a science fiction film to come there. And some people are excited about that place. Others don't really like it, but I think it's neat to stop by and see this thing.
And I'm
It's
assuming it's decommissioned. They don't have any people out there maintaining it, taking care of it or anything like that, do they? It's
No,
just an
it's
old.
decommissioned since the late 80s when satellites took over the role. But and the thing is now it's going into the ice cap slowly but surely. So when I came there first in '96, you would start from the top, no, from the bottom and up. So you would go down and climb big stairs up to the main building, and then up. It's like 7, 8 stories or different levels. Now, when I was there last time 3 years ago, we went up on the roof and entered the building with a door that is just beneath the radar ball.
All right. You're going to have to help me understand that. Is it that the facility or the building is sinking somehow, or is it just that the ice and snow are piling up?
Well, I mean, that's how a glacier works. You have the slowly build up of snow layers on top of another snow layer, and then slowly it gets covered because it's a big thing, and the precipitations are not very high. It takes time, but now it's like 40 years or more since it was abandoned. Then it's going slowly in. So in another 20, 30 years, it's going to disappear.
So maybe this is a good time to ask this. And I don't know how much you'd like to discuss things like climate change and global warming, but it is a thing that comes up when we talk about, Greenland, Iceland, glaciers. And I hear you saying the ice kind of piles up and stacks up slowly over time. But then we also hear an awful lot of talk about the Greenland ice cap melting or the glaciers receding and stuff like that. If you could, you're an expert on this. If you can help me get my head around that, I'm sure there's some listeners that have a hard time getting their head around it as well.
So when you are in the mountain areas of Iceland or Greenland, it's very, very clear to one that has the minimum of knowledge that the glaciers are receding. But it's a complex system, and like the ice cap is a very big thing. I mean, if the Greenland ice cap would melt entirely, it would raise the waters of the ocean about 8 meters, or like what, 26, 7 feet. So it's a lot of mass of water. And what you see in East Greenland, which is a very alpine landscape, is that the small alpine type glaciers that are hanging on the slopes of mountains, they are disappearing very rapidly. So the lower alpine type small glaciers, they are going away. You also see that the big glacier outlets that are coming from the main ice cap, they are getting shorter and shorter, so that they're melting. So it's happening from below and goes up. But the main ice cap is very high, and that's not going to melt anytime soon. It takes a lot of time. And the main ice cap is also quite far north. So when we brag about crossing the ice cap of Greenland, we're actually not crossing it where it's widest, but where it's most convenient, because there are airports on both sides. That's about 540k crossing, but it's about double that, a little bit more than double that actually, up north. And in that area, it is actually quite dry, that is, precipitations are low, and with changing climate, that could also increase for a period of time the precipitation. So it's a possibility that it just completely changes the balance of the ice cap. So maybe the south part of the ice cap will disappear and the north part will grow for a while and then maybe start to melt if the warming continues. And it's a complex system. But, being at the lower altitudes in Greenland, it's so clear that the ice is melting because you see all these moraines with nothing behind, or, big moraines and a tiny glacier behind because it's shrunk so much.
Got it.
And
That
I
makes.
mean,
Yep. Go ahead.
yeah, so when you're there with people and you're explaining this to them, it becomes quite visible for everyone. I mean, nobody tries to deny it when they're standing in front of it.
Well, it makes complete sense that, as long as it stays below freezing, things aren't going to melt. And then as you get closer, lower in elevation, maybe further south, it's getting warmer where it used to be stay frozen. But now I think I know what you're saying. That stuff's melting, but the real high elevation is warming up, not enough to melt, but warming up enough to get more snow. It sounds like. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's cool. Well, I have a bunch of questions, but I think we're going to work our way back to them. I'd really, really like to figure out how you got from where you were to where you are now. So I don't know if we need to go all the way back to, when you were a 2-year-old or something like that, out with your dad in the ice and snow, but give us, how far back do we need to go to kind of get to understand you, Einar?
Good question. I mean, my childhood definitely, when I realized in my heart that I was in love of the outdoors, was when I was a kid. I think 8 years old, when I was sent to a farm in the summer. And this was a custom thing to do in Iceland at the time. It's not happening so much anymore, but kids were sent to farms to stay for a period of time over the summer. My first summer I stayed for 4 weeks, and these were friends of my mom that had the farm. Very kind people, actually. So I was really lucky with the place where I landed. And they gave me a lot of freedom to explore. And from that time, I'm sure that I was in love with the outdoors. I was, with the freedom of the greater spaces and the nature. So, yeah, I think that's when I realized myself.
As you mentioned, it was more customary to do that for your kids to go out to a farm in the summer. But is it always a scenario like friends or your parents? You go to a friend's farm, or do they have farms for people that don't have friends that have farms? Or I'm just trying to imagine how that works.
Yeah, I mean, when we were older, like teenagers, we would go to farms and, we would go to farms and work. So we would get paid for that a little bit. I did so the summers I was 15, 16, and 17. I worked on farms in the summer. And that was with people that we wouldn't necessarily know. Just somehow you figured out. I mean, some of the farmers would just put a little advertisement in the little paper of the farmers, or they had an office in Reykjavik actually recruiting kids. But that's also, at that time you needed hands. Now it's all with machines more or less, so you don't really need so much extra hands.
I can imagine that back before the machinery, probably a fairly short growing season. You probably got to do a lot of work over a short period of time. And then you don't need the help in the winter when it's frozen. So yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Did you have siblings growing up that were doing this as well?
Yes, my 2 younger siblings were doing this as well, and also one of my older brothers. But I think I have the family record of staying away in the summer.
I could ask you what that says about your relationship with your parents.
No, I can tell you the truth is that I really enjoyed being at the countryside. So, and I grew quite independent in that sense very early.
Was there a moment when you remember deciding that you wanted to work in the outdoors maybe in a guiding capacity or tourism capacity or leading treks and skiing and stuff like that? Do you remember when that first entered your head?
Yeah, I mean, at 14, I was lucky to get a work like a summer job at a national park. It was a service for the national parks and the nature reservations. And at that time, I was pretty sure that I wanted to do something that was like connected to nature and outside job. I didn't see guiding as a possibility that early, but I think maybe from the age of 16, when I realized that the local touring club had tour leaders going with groups in the mountains, I somehow started to develop the idea in my head. And I think I was 19 when I got my first trip with the local touring club as a tour guide or tour leader. But it was not very well paid at the time. But I mean, you know, it was the start.
I'm curious, did you ever have an opportunity to go with the touring club as more of a guest or an intern, or they just put you right into a tour leader or guiding job?
No, I mean, I had gone with them on trips before, yes.
You had. Okay.
Like one or two occasions. My father was the tour leader when I was a kid.
Oh, okay, cool.
And then, yeah, I think I did a few trips with them as a guest, definitely.
You mentioned something interesting. You just mentioned that your father was a tour leader. Is that part of his regular work and job, or what was your dad doing when you were growing up?
He was doing a lot of different things, actually. He was, for a period of time, a teacher. Then he didn't like that as much as before, so he became a sailor, and he was doing first the normal sailor's work, and then as a cook on a small trawler from close to Reykjavik. And then he became a journalist, and from that he developed the interest of law. So at 44-year-old, he started studying law and became a judge.
Oh, wow.
That's a short version of him.
All right. So what's the biggest influence you think he made on your life and on the direction you ended up going?
I mean, both my parents were a lot into nature, and his interest in birds and nature definitely had an impact on me. Also, the fact that he was a national park warden for a couple of summer seasons, and we stayed with him in the big park in the southeast of Iceland. Just being there in the area, and he was busy working. Me and my siblings, younger siblings, we were kind of taking care of ourselves during the day. So we had a big breakfast in the morning, then we had like at 2 o'clock, we had a big meal, like a late lunch, and then we had the dinner, and that was the checkpoints. So between breakfast and the midday meal and the dinner, we were just taking care of ourselves mostly. And he hadn't, and that also had a big impact.
Do you remember doing things you probably shouldn't have been doing, but that you're happy that you did with all that freedom?
Probably, yeah, mostly about, that
you're willing to discuss on a podcast.
Well, I mean, I wasn't very naughty, but we did go places where maybe we shouldn't have been going, like, into small canyons and, dipping into places where we maybe wouldn't have been allowed if you knew, stuff like that.
To a lot of, your adventurous sense now and going out and exploring new things. So that's cool. All right. So at 19, you got a job as a tour leader.
Yeah,
so what happened with that? How was that?
That was an Easter ski trip with the touring club, like a cross-country, backcountry skiing. And I was there with my cousin, who was always my companion for all this stuff we did. And at that time also, I must say, we had started our training for mountain rescue. So that also helped us getting the job, because being trained for mountain rescue meant first aid and lots of mountain training. Yeah, so it was good. I mean, we were ambitious and tried to do our best. Apparently, when I look back, I see that we really tried hard to do our job correctly. And it's about entertainment also when you have people in a hut in the mountains. So you have to be entertaining as well. And what would you do to
entertain them? I'm curious. Are there some customary or traditional things that you do in that part of the world to entertain your guests?
We would have, what do you call it, a wake or something? I don't know what it's called in English, but maybe that's not the word, but it's like having a program in the evening, singing, maybe.
Oh, okay.
a little bit of improvised, games or a little bit of a play. Like, let's say, there's a designated group that has to play, the wolf and the Little Red Hood. What was she called in English? Yes.
Yeah.
Or a similar story like that. So you get, there's the script. Now you have to play that, and you have 10 minutes to prepare, and then you have 10 minutes to do the whole thing. And we would definitely play the guitar and sing a bit, and
All right,
having
very
fun.
cool. Were you typically in some sort of wilderness camp, hut, tents? What was that like in the beginning?
In the beginning, it was hut based, and it was like Easter trips or winter trips, end of the year, like a New Year thing. So, but it wasn't a lot, but it was the start of our thing in this. And then when I was 21, I got a position as a national park warden. I was quite young, but I couldn't attend the course until I was 20. So as soon as I was 20, I signed up for the training of being a national park warden. And again, the mountain rescue training definitely helped me because it was a big like a plus for people working in the wilderness. And I worked 3 full summers and 2 partial summers as a national park warden. But
So what does that
then
job entail? What does a national park warden do in Iceland?
it might have changed a little bit since then, but at the time it was a lot about going around these vast areas and making sure that things were okay, cleaning out remote toilets, helping people with information, marking trails, all sorts of stuff. It was quite amazing job in many ways,
What did you
lots
like
of
most about it?
outdoors. It's a good question. I think maybe both the roaming that, to go around with, hiking the trails to check if they were okay. And also the fact that we had like educational program. So we had shorter walks, like, an hour walk or a 2 hour or 4 hour walks, where we created a program where we would show people the different geology and plants of the area. And I love that because it's, to show people, to let them discover is a great thing.
So these just visitors to the park that are coming in, and you're doing the nature walks and hikes and stuff with them.
Yeah.
Was it mostly what do you call somebody from Iceland? Icelanders?
And Icelander.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So were most of the people you were interacting with back then Icelanders?
Probably about half the people were Icelanders at the time. That has totally changed now because of the volume of the tourism in Iceland. But at that time, at least half of the guests were Icelandic.
So was this at what point? Well, I guess so probably when you were younger and you did the job when you were 19 as a tour leader, was that mostly Icelanders
Only.
in those were only. So
Mhm.
it sounds like what you're saying is when you stepped into the park warden job, it's when you really started to interact with more of the international tourists. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Do you remember any of your initial impressions? Was that exciting? Was that nerve-wracking, intimidating? What was it like as you started to work with more and more international guests? What were your takeaways from that?
No, I mean, I was excited about it because, Iceland was a bit, reserved and isolated at the time. So it was like a bigger window to the outside to meet people from all over. And I had to practice my English. And, it was mainly just very nice and interesting to do because in generally people are friendly.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to put you on the spot, and if nobody comes to mind, that's fine. But I'm curious: was there a particular interaction you had with someone from outside of Iceland early on that really kind of made a lasting impression on you?
Not really. It's more like overall. I mean, I remember some persons like a guy with a dislocated shoulder that I helped, or a couple of Americans that, had an accident with their car. So, I mean, that I had longer interaction with people where something happened and I had to help, but nothing that is really coming up to mind. No.
Yeah. I was curious because some people I speak with, they had no idea that certain places existed until they met somebody that shows up and said, where are you from? Well, I'm from this place. What? And it just starts the wheels turning. And then you find yourself going to some place that you'd never even heard of because you met somebody that was visiting your country. I was just wondering, because you'd mentioned that kind of helped open your eyes to the world out there.
Yeah. I think for me, it was the bigger game changer when I started guiding and I started meeting people that had traveled quite remote places of the world elsewhere. And I got to hear stories because then I was with the people for a long time. And I would hear stories from different places in the world, like Africa, where I had never been and I had never really heard that much about. And it it all starts with this thing that I was working for my mountain rescue group at their office doing stuff like helping with different, because the mountain rescue in Iceland is auto financed, so they have to get the money themselves. They do not get much from the state. And I was working on different stuff, like we had a lottery, we were selling Christmas trees and stuff, but I mean, just finding ways to get revenues to run the mountain rescue. And I was working at the office and the phone rings and there's a guy from a small travel agency in East Iceland and he's asking me if I know someone who can ski on cross-country skis and speaks French. I knew a couple of guys. So I gave him the names and helped him find the numbers. And then I said, well, if they're not available, I'm happy to go, but I only speak English. And the thing is that a week later or so, the phone rings again and he says, well, I can't find anyone. So I went.
How quickly can you learn French?
Not that quickly. So I got a group leader with the group that translated, a French lady, and I did the ski group and it was fantastic and they were really happy. It was a week trip in the mountains. And then the year after, he hires me again for 2 trips this time. And that year, he didn't even search for somewhere else. It was easier to go with me. And then I met an old friend in a place called Landmannalaugar in the Highlands, and it's a place where there's a hot or a warm river you can bath in. So you're sitting there after a good day of cross-country skiing in the mountains. You're sitting in the warm river, and we're talking. And he says to me, actually, it's a guy like you that we need. And the we was that he was working for a brand new company working with French clients. And that was in April. And he said, you have to learn French, of course. So the 1st of May, I was in Paris signing up for a French course. And the 18th of July, I took my first group. So I had 10 weeks to learn French.
So you could learn French pretty quick, apparently.
Well, yeah, I must admit it was very basic at the time. I learned enough to communicate basic.
Did you find a lot of the French clients that you had at that time also spoke some English? I mean, I'm just curious because I can imagine maybe you need to speak French, but then I'm sure some of the guests were speaking English and it might just been easier to do that, or?
No, I wasn't allowed. And that was very clear to me because, you are hired as a French-speaking guide and the clients are expecting that. So you stick to French and the English speakers, they would help me find words in the beginning. So I would maybe ask them, how do you say this in French? But then I would continue in French. If you slide to the other side, then you're in trouble.
Well, yeah, because then people in the group start to kind of sense, oh, geez, his English is a lot better than his French. And then it kind of defeats the purpose, I guess. Huh?
Yeah. So, with the French, I met a lot of people that had been traveling, both in Asia, like in Nepal, and in Africa, and in the desert, in the Sahara Desert. And that's where I got much broader idea of the world, actually. So I later started to go to some of these places myself just to discover.
Do you remember the first place that you started really getting excited about before you went to visit? At some point in this process, was there just that place that you just had to go? Maybe it took you a while to get there, but it was the one that you kept coming back to?
The desert, the Sahara.
Not interesting.
And
Why
I
do you
went
think that
there.
is?
Why? Because the French spoke so highly about it, and because partially the highland deserts of Iceland was one of the things that they actually appreciated so much. And when I was a kid, nobody was really talking about the Icelandic highland deserts as something interesting. It was just eroded, you know. I mean, we had a little bit of this very old fashioned farming way of thinking that, green is good and sand is bad, you know. So when I was guiding the French, I discovered that they were, amazed by walking a full day in black sands. You know, they found that very interesting. And so that changed my way of thinking a bit. And then, yeah, I got the idea of I needed to go to Sahara and see what it was like.
Was there a particular country in the Sahara that drew your attention?
I mean, they talked a lot about different places, but Algeria probably most. But when I went to Niger in the desert, in the Tenere part of the desert.
Roughly how long after you started thinking about going until the time you actually had the opportunity to go? What kind of time frame was that?
Around maybe 10 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. Did it live? And you're talking about it now, so I'm guessing it sounds like it was a good experience. But did it live up to your expectations? Or
Or the trip to Africa?
yeah,
Oh, it definitely did.
yeah, sounds like it surpassed them a bit.
I've been to Morocco a lot of times. I've been to Niger once. I've been to Mali once. All these trips were fantastic, but I think the highlight of them all was the trip to Mali in the Sahel. And one of the things is the music of these, the Tuareg music. And the countries like Mali. Mali has a particularly magnificent, fusing of music. So they're really, really interesting, groups and artists to listen to there.
You've mentioned music a few times in this conversation. It's come up whether you were playing guitar with your guests in the beginning. You mentioned crossing the ice cap with music in your head, and now we're talking about music. So tell me more. There's something about your connection with music that is obviously seems to be pretty important. Where did that come from?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, my mom probably. She was very interested in music. Was a big fan of country and folk music and different stuff. Both my parents liked singing, but she maybe more than my father. And yeah, I mean, during my childhood, I remember her putting records on the record player all the time. So I guess it's mainly from her. And then I started listening seriously to music when I was like 8 or something. When I bought my first record, I went downtown with some money I had gathered, and I bought a single with Slade. I don't remember if don't know if you remember, the glamour rock group from England, Slade.
Do not know them.
Yeah, I mean, it was this so-called glamour rock, but my
Mhm.
parents were. I was only 8. My parents were expecting me to come home with some child songs, children lullabies or whatever. I don't know, and I
So
came
were
home with
they
the
happy or
newest.
upset about that? They send you back, pick something
Neither.
out
They
age
were they were
appropriate.
just very surprised. They were very surprised. And then the same
Back.
year, I actually listened for the first time to the Beatles, and I fell for the Beatles when I was 8. I've been a big admirer since. Yeah, so music has always been quite important to me.
You like to go to concerts as well?
Sure, I do.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I just fulfilled last week a childhood dream. I went to see Paul McCartney
Oh, wow, that's cool.
in Hamilton in Canada. So I just returned from that trip. That was like a mission I've had for a long time, but now finally I got it done.
It's very cool. So, what's the next task on your list? I shouldn't say task. That doesn't sound right. The next, are you thinking about something else that's been important to you for a while? Because I heard you say it took 10 years to get to Africa. You didn't lose focus. You got there. You just went and watched Paul McCartney or, you know. So what's next on your list?
I think probably it is to go on a long private walk, not guiding, but for me, I've been dreaming about the PCT for a long time, but maybe the easier start for me will be to do a long trail in France, for example.
So when you
Many
say
people,
the PCT, I think Pacific Coast Trail,
it
but
is.
maybe that's because I'm from the US. Okay, I got it right. All right.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
What's in France?
France, like many countries in Europe, has a big system of what they call the GRs, the trails of big walks. And the GRs, you can walk, let's say, for example, this trail in Spain to Santiago de la Compostela. That's a very popular trail, but people started normally in the Pyrenees. But actually, in France, you have a series of trails. If you would be living in Lyon, you could walk all the way to Compostela from there. Or if you start in Paris, there's a lot of French people that went all the way to Compostela back in time. So there's like a tree. If you imagine a tree that has one root, so that's one thing. Another like an interesting trail in France would be to follow the Pyrenees from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic Ocean, which is about 30 to 40 days walk. Yeah, so it's some kind of a walk like that I dream about.
And you kind of framed it with not guided, not guiding, but go on you use the word private walk. So is
Yeah,
this,
because I do so much with clients still.
yeah,
So
you need a
so
break?
it's just that meeting people on a trail is different from having the role of a leader.
Yeah, no, I get it completely. And that was the part that I was curious about was when you envision this, do you envision yourself interacting with people on the trail, or is it more like put my headphones on and my blinders on and not blinders, but just spend 40 days by yourself, not talking to anybody, or if it was more, if there was a social aspect to doing a hike like this?
First of all, if I'm not in a very glacial environment like the Icecap or something, then I never put on headphones because I don't want to cut off my hearing. I like to hear the environment. I like to hear birds and animals and whatever is there. So definitely not headphones.
Okay.
And yeah, I think it's really nice to communicate with people that you meet on a trail on this, equal level, not being in the role of a guide. I've done that a lot of times. I've been guided also when I've gone to countries like Morocco or the desert or Mali. I always had local guides, and I really appreciate also having someone leading me when I'm not the one that knows the best.
So if you had the opportunity to walk one of these trails, because I wonder about this sometimes just for myself a little bit, but you had an opportunity to walk one of these trails, but nobody was going to be there. You knew that it was only going to be you the entire time. I don't know how you quantify this, but how much does that change for you? Would you be like, nah, I don't even want to do it? Or is it like, okay, fine, I'm still going to do it?
No, I could still do it. It's like nature is there. So, and part of it is also to be with yourself. It all has its appealing sides.
I guess that's where I was going with that is, some people need a little bit more social interaction, and the idea of being alone for 3 days on a trail, just they can't even get their head around it. And then there's other folks that I like time by myself, and I'm perfectly fine doing that. Doesn't mean that you don't like people, but I guess that's where I was going, because for me, if you say, well, I'm going to drop you in the most beautiful place on earth, but it's just going to be you there. For me, I feel like it's a missed opportunity. I would be sad about that, to be there by myself and not sharing it with someone, just because I just value that, the shared part of those experiences. So I was just curious kind of what your perspective was, but it sounds like you're maybe a little bit better at connecting with nature and not necessarily needing someone to be chatting with you.
I like both, but I think, you know, it's just whatever happens when you go on a trip like that. And I've also said to my friends, if I get to the point that I can put this this dream to reality and go on a trip, then I mean, I'm happy to have friends working with me. Just don't want to organize it for them because that's what I'm always doing.
That could be the challenge, right? Because if you invite your friends all of a sudden and they know what you do for a living. If they're, that could be one of those situations. It's kind of like when you let on to people that you know something about computers. All of a sudden, you handle all of their computer issues, that type
Yeah.
of thing. Yeah. All right. Very cool. So, what do you think? What do you think needs to happen for you to have one of these hikes come to fruition?
Honestly, I think I need to give myself the break. So I need to organize my work the way that I'm not, in what you call it, I'm not needed,
Uh-huh.
and also just take the decision a long time ahead so that I can't avoid it, I can't escape it, because it's I'm still running a small company, and the trap is that I have the tendency to be thinking about that all the time. Yes, I mean there's actually nothing that should stop me except for my own head.
I can relate to that so much, Einar. I want to make sure that we cover kind of you getting your own business started, because I think where we kind of left off was, you got a job as a guide
Hmm.
and speaking French. And that sounded like it was that a full-time job, a seasonal job, and kind of walk us from there into the future or into the present, I
Yes.
should say.
So it's in 89 I started guiding as a main job. So from 89 my main income is from guiding. It was a summer job and then a short winter season, but it was much better paid than most other jobs that I could get at the time. And I filled up the gap by working different jobs. I worked for my mountain rescue around Christmas and New Year's. Um, I did for the mountain rescue school. I did lectures and teaching. I worked in a what do you call it? A mountain equipment shop. You know, so I just did different odd jobs to fill up the gap with the guiding. And then I went to school in France in '91. So I stayed 3 years in France and learned my French much better, and studied geography as well. And at that time, we were already with my brother, my cousin, and a friend. We were already thinking about creating a company, which we did in '93, just before Christmas in 1993. We created a company called Icelandic Mountain Guides. What led to that was two things. There was kind of like a little bit of a need or a demand for guiding on glaciers in the national park in the southeast. And as well, me and this friend, the fourth person in the quartet, we were really interested in the backpacking area of south of the Vatnajökull Glacier in Iceland. It's a fantastic wilderness where very few people had actually been roaming for any other things than gathering sheep in the autumn. So in '92, we started preparing by hiking in this area. And so we created this company just before Christmas '93, and our first season was the summer '94. And it was a struggle for quite a while.
What was the biggest struggle right off the bat that maybe surprised you a little bit?
Sorry?
What was the biggest struggle right off the bat when you got started? What was the biggest challenge or struggle that
Mm.
perhaps was a surprise? Perhaps you didn't even realize it was going to be that difficult.
I mean, we knew mountains, we knew guiding, but we knew nothing about marketing or sales or organizing as an office. And I think that maybe the biggest surprise was that the clients were just not waiting in a line to go on our trips. So it was much harder work than we anticipated to get going. And the revenues were tiny in the beginning.
Doesn't it suck when you have this thing is really great and you know that you can deliver it to somebody and share it with them and really give them an amazing experience, and then they don't come. That's very disappointing, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But at the same time, we were fueled by the interest that grew, even though it was slowly, that it grew still. I mean, I remember, I think it's the first summer we are operating, and we had distributed a little bit, like a leaflet in the south. And I met an Icelandic lady that had seen, and she had heard about us also maybe through the touring club or something. So she said, we are actually a group of people that are interested in your 4-day walk in this area. Things like that. Yeah, okay, so there is someone noticing at least. And actually the year after, I guided that group in, so it grew, even though it was slow, it grew. And then in 96, we got connection with a big French travel agency. And, so 10 years after we started, we already had like 4 people working, 5 people in the office. And then another 10 years passed, and then we had about 50 to 60 people in the office. And I mean, maybe a couple of hundred guides on the payroll. So, yeah.
Wow. Do you attribute that to, because you said in the beginning, we knew nothing about marketing and sales, about what we were offering. We just didn't know how to get it in front of people. And it kind of the arc that I just heard was it progressed. I'm just curious, did you make a traumatic shift in what you were doing with the marketing and sales side, or did it just organically, just through word of mouth and reputation, build up on its own that way, or a combination of the two?
Mainly organically in the beginning, because, we didn't have the internet going yet at the time. So there was no homepage or anything. It was just organically. Like the little excursions on the glaciers, like 3 hours walk on ice that we were offering at the time was seen as, extraordinary mountaineering stuff or something like that. And ordinary people in the travel business would frown upon it. Today, it's actually the biggest activity that people do in Iceland, tourists, is to go on a glacier or into an ice cave.
Why were people frowning on that
Because they
earlier
had
on?
never
Help me
tried
understand.
it. So actually, the main challenge we had actually was to get bigger travel agencies to understand that it was a good product and that they could sell it to normal people without a problem.
To people that were already going to Iceland anyway. They didn't
Yes,
even
yes,
want to, okay.
as an activity, and that took a little bit more than 10 years, and then it exploded. And for a while we were the biggest operator in
And
that field.
And I suspect that if you're doing that, maybe the people that you're doing the 3-hour tour with are not necessarily going to come back and book a, Greenland Icecap expedition, but
No, not
it helps you
necessarily.
get some reviews, helps you get some traffic, helps you kind of just get in front of people a little bit. Or what was
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So the company was about day tours on one side and longer trips on the other side, and I was always more into the longer trips. And at the period of time, I was a lot in the office organizing the longer trips. I always guided at least 1 or 2 trips every season, but I also got a bit into this thing, being the leader of a section of the company that took care of the longer trips. To make a long story short, we had a big investor coming into the company, and then with COVID, um, we were in a very bad position, and I actually got pushed out of the company. Well, everyone was sacked at the beginning of COVID because there was nothing happening. And then I kind of went to the roots again. So I started Arctic hiking with my childhood friend, Kristin, and I'm back guiding a lot.
Okay. So this was a different company all along in the past for like about 20 years.
Yeah, I think I
Something
spent
like that.
25 years with mountain guides.
Okay.
So I was the CEO of Icelandic Mountain Guides for 11 years or 12 years, and then the leader of the group department for another 12.
So now what you're doing, you're spending a lot more time in the field with clients guiding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is it, and it's a smaller operation. It's the two, you and your friend
Mm-hmm.
that are doing this. What's your mix now? Is it all longer? Yeah, I guess we started at the beginning of the conversation. We talked, it was pretty much all multi-day stuff now, right?
Yeah. So I actually, there was a lot of things that I didn't anticipate when I was working in Icelandic Mountain Guides back in the days. I mean, I had no way of understanding how big tourism would become in Iceland. It was pretty small when I was starting. I think when we created the company, it was like 150 to 70,000 people a year visiting the country, mainly in the summer. Now we are probably around 2 million in Iceland. The day trips, which I think it's cool. It's really a good experience for people to do that, but it became too much of a mainstream commerce. And the long trips is always where you disconnect, and I think it's more meaningful in a way. For me, at least, it was.
I get that.
And yeah, so now when I'm back in a small company, which I only share with one other person, I do mainly what I love to do. So I do no day tours. It's trekking and hiking. We're not doing bus tours, skiing. Yeah, stuff that we love to do.
That's not everybody figures that out. Sometimes they stay right in something else until it's too late. And you still have a lot of things to do. You got to go take a hike somewhere, and you're doing what you love. I'm curious, what's the one piece of advice you would give your younger self? If you could speak to yourself at 19, you just got hired to be a trip leader for a couple of these things with the touring club. What's the one piece of advice? And it doesn't have to be business related or tourism related. I'm just curious. What piece of advice would you give your younger self?
Good question. So let me start with business wise. I would say, even though you build something up, don't be afraid to change, to stop what you've been doing and start again from zero. There's always a possibility to do something new or do better, something old. Yeah, on the private, it's a very good question. What would my younger self, maybe I would tell my younger self to slow down a little bit, breathe in, enjoy life, and don't run that fast. But I think that's what age gives us, the perspective of sitting on a stone and just watch the horizon.
It's interesting because, as I'm getting older as well, and the things I would tell myself, a lot of them are the same things my parents were telling me back in the day when I was ignoring them, thinking, what do you know? You're old. What do you know? That's not how the world works. Now I find myself thinking, oh, I remember when my mom told me I needed to relax and slow down and enjoy life a little bit more. And now I'm at 52. I'm trying to remind myself that every day or so. And I'm like, I wish I would have been open to hearing it back when I was 16 or whenever she said it. But that's not how the world works, is it? We have to kind of figure things out on our own, I guess.
No,
So,
I mean, and I see my son doing a lot of the same things that I did. I think, he just has to go through this. There's no, and what I do understand is that when he's doing stuff the same way as I did, he's learning. He's learning from the mistakes also, and it's something that it's just normal. It's just normal.
it's just normal. And it's, I've got kids as well. And it's hard not to share the wisdom that you think maybe you've gained along the way. It's hard not to share it because you don't want to see them in pain. You don't want to see them make the mistakes, but that's really that's just how it works. So maybe we just we tell him what we think. Just, I don't know, maybe I tell him and my daughter what I think just so I can feel like I'm doing my job to advise them. And then they're going to go do whatever they're going to do. That's fine. I respect that. Even when it's hard to watch, I respect it. So I appreciate that. And how many, you've got the son? Do you have one son, or we didn't really get into that too much?
One son and one daughter.
Okay. Are either one of them involved in trekking, hiking, skiing, tourism, any of that stuff?
My daughter is not exactly in tourism, but she's an avid hiker. She really loves hiking in the mountains and being outside the nature. And she's actually helping me with social media.
Oh, cool.
So she is working a little bit in the field. Yeah, so she's definitely interested in all this nature stuff that I've been doing. My son is less, but he's a good person. So I mean, what do you want? You want kids to be happy and to be good people, and he definitely is a good person. And he's not so much into hiking or trekking at the moment, but maybe that will come, maybe not, doesn't matter.
Yep. Very, very cool. We've discussed a bunch of different things, a roundabout way. Appreciate everything you shared with us. And I'm curious, what did I forget to ask you, or what do you wish I would have asked you? Or what do you want to make sure our listeners know either about you or Arctic hiking and expeditions or Greenland or Iceland or just anything in general before we wrap up?
Well, good question again. Well, maybe if I promote myself a little bit, I think...
Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
I think for us, it's a very important aspect of the trips we make, that people learn about the country where they're in. And the part of Greenland we are traveling mostly is the east part, which is the most isolated, I would say, of Greenlandic towns and villages. There are 3,000 people altogether living in the east of Greenland, and they speak their own language, which is a different, it's even a little bit more than a dialect from the West Greenlandic language. It's a different language in many ways. And it's the most authentic Greenland from my point of view. Wonderful people that live there. And I consider myself lucky to be there. In Iceland, of course, that's where we're native. And we try to share as much as we can about who we are, what we are. So it's a big part of our trips is to be educational, to transmit the culture. And even if we're hiking, we still want people to know who are living here and what are they, what are they doing.
Happy you brought that up. And I suspect as I was listening to you, I was thinking, I'm sure there's some really interesting food opportunities to try things that maybe most people from outside that part of the world might seem a little different to them. And
well, in both countries, there are food opportunities that we don't even try to present because they're too remote for people. But there are also lots of food opportunities that are very, very interesting for people.
When you say they're too remote, you don't present them because they're too remote. What do you mean by that?
Like in Iceland, we have this tradition of eating fermented shark.
Yep, heard of that.
And or fermented skate, the fish. You can give the shark as a taste, but it's like a hard food experience for people if they're not acquainted. And in Greenland, it's a bit the same. If you don't really offer a fermented seal meat to a tourist, but fresh fish, that's excellent.
We don't need to get too graphic, but I'm curious, Einar, is that because they're just it's just too weird to think about for people? They get grossed out, or is it because you're on a hiking and a trek and you don't need somebody to be needing to use the bathroom every 15 minutes because their body's not used to it?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's mostly the cultural aspect is that if you get people to taste something that is too remote and too different for them, that's a negative experience, and we want to avoid that.
Okay,
of course.
All right.
But we try more. We try more to go for the food that is easier for people, but is still local.
Yeah.
So
very, very cool.
That is if that's fresh fish in both countries, is the basic. That's you have like in East Greenland, you have trout and salmon, in summer of a quality that is totally different from something that comes from fish farming.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, very cool. I hope our paths will cross someday in Iceland or Greenland. They're both places that I have not been, and I would love to go, and hope to share some time with you at some fermented shark, because I will eat anything. I've never eaten anything that was a negative experience, no matter how difficult it was for me to get my head around it and my body around it.
In Iceland, in late January, we have the old month of Þorri starting, and then we have these traditional feasts where we eat fermented, sour, dried and smoked food. So if you are happy for a tasting like that, then please come, late January and join us on a traditional meal feast.
That actually sounds a lot of fun. I think that sounds pretty cool.
It is a lot of fun, and we drink Black Death snaps, with this.
If you said you did it in July, I would be a little bit more excited. January sounds really cold in Iceland, but maybe not.
It's not very cold in Iceland because it's an island, but it is, of course, cold compared to the place where you're sitting now.
Well, but yes, you're right. And I can't speak for everybody that's outside of Iceland, but there's something about the name of the country that probably just makes it seem a lot colder than it really is.
Yeah, it's a topic for another interview probably, but the two countries I've been presenting should switch names.
I have heard that before. So very cool. Einar, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on, sharing your stories and educating me and our listeners on quite a few different things. So appreciate it so much, and look forward to having another conversation another day, maybe in January, where we'll have a much deeper food conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll chat with you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.